Well, now to pet vaccination. According to the RSPCA, 1/3 of Australian households have a dog and a quarter have a cat. So looking after the much-loved family members is a multi-million-dollar industry. For years, vets have urged their owners to bring their pets in for annual vaccinations. But recent scientific data shows core vaccines don't need to be administered annually because the protection lasts at least 3 years. Now some pet owners believe they're a victim of a practice that's costing them unnecessarily and possibly risking the health of their animal. Mike Sexton's been finding out why.
George.
If George, the West Highland Terrier, is nervous, then he's putting on a brave face. Today he's being vaccinated against 3 life-threatening illnesses.
It's often called a C3, which is distemper, hepatitis and parvovirus. These 3 diseases are all invariably fatal diseases.
Dogs are the most popular pets in Australia. The RSPCA says close to 3 million homes have one. So controlling the spread of canine disease is a big part of the work of vets.
Well done, George. Good boy.
We have good control over, as I say, very devastating diseases such as parvovirus. Even with vaccination, we occasionally get outbreaks, but if vaccinations weren't done over a population basis, we'd see parvovirus back to the devastating effects that we saw in the 1980s.
That vaccinations are important is not in question, but there's growing discontent among some owners that their animals are being unnecessarily treated and that there's a risk some pets can have an adverse reaction to the injections.
Sasha was a Maltese Silky Terrier and she was 8.5 years old, and we'd get annual reminders every year for vaccination, which I always obeyed.
Elizabeth Hart says her dog had to be put down after having an adverse reaction to a vaccination shot.
It didn't look like much at first, but she just sort of went downhill a bit. Brought her back to the vet, and he said that she had hemorrhagic gastroenteritis, and he kept her in. And then a few days later, she wasn't getting better, and a few days later he said there was nothing they could do. We had to put her down.
We have to admit that adverse reactions do occasionally occur, but they're exceedingly rare. And we talk a lot about a risk and a benefit analysis. And the benefit to an animal being protected from infectious diseases which could potentially kill it far outweigh the slight risk of an adverse reaction.
But Elizabeth Hart found no comfort knowing that her dog was a statistical improbability. Instead, she started investigating the nature and frequency of canine vaccinations and discovered she'd been unnecessarily taking her dog to be injected every year.
There are viral vaccines for parvovirus, distemper virus and adenovirus, and they have long-lived immunity. As I say, they've been demonstrated to be 7 years or longer. When the dog has them as a puppy, when they get the proper dose as a puppy, that they should generally amount to a lifelong immune response.
An acute allergic reaction to the vaccine.
Professor Michael Day chairs the World Small Animal Veterinary Association's Scientific Committee. He confirms research shows that core vaccinations do last well beyond 1 year.
We have very good, clear scientific evidence which is legally accepted for 3 years, but we have less good evidence, but certainly evidence that these vaccines, at least for dogs, can protect them for up to 9 years, and probably even longer than that. The trouble is that is minimal evidence at this stage.
The World Body recommended in 2007 that core vaccinations be every 3 years rather than annually. The Australian Veterinary Association adopted these protocols last year. But Elizabeth Hart believes pet owners are not getting the information because the message of annual vaccinations continues to be spread through reminder letters to owners, websites and the media.
We promised puppies at the beginning of the show. What's the story, Chris?
It's a bit of a serious one, actually. Puppies right around the country are currently at risk after an outbreak of a highly contagious and deadly dog virus. It's so easy to prevent this. So vaccinate your dogs at 6 weeks, then 12 weeks, then 16 weeks, then every year after that.
It also has to be recognised that the previous vaccination protocols that we've used, it served the pet population in pretty good stead. And there may well be a reluctance to change what, in effect, has worked very well over many, many years.
Elizabeth Hart believes the reason why vets are reluctant to change comes down to dollars. Choice magazine recently quoted an industry survey showing 90% of vets indicated that dog and cat vaccinations were the #1 contributor to practice turnover, and that a change from annual vaccination would have an adverse effect on their business.
It's just become an easy way to get the pet owner in with this vaccination, and they just have to change that way of thinking, that they should be looking at the health of the dog, what's the best for the dog, rather than just pumping these products in every year, which might be doing them harm.
While Elizabeth Hart believes the answer lies in regulation, so vets adhere to industry protocols, the Australian Veterinary Association believes education and consultation are the key.
The best time for a client to discuss the individual pet's vaccination requirements is during an annual health check.
There we go. Well done, George.